Well, hello and welcome to the February Open Topic Livestream Q&A. I'm Andreas, I'm Aantonop, and my mic is plugged in. Yes, my mic is plugged in. Yes, my mic is plugged in. I checked 3 times and I also looked at the mixer. And this time I also set the gain correctly so it doesn't cause frizzy cutoffs like it did throughout my entire talk about the ships that are sinking, the sinks that are shipping. And as a result, we are now live. Let's go to the results of our poll. Let's see. Will I start today's live stream in 30 minutes with my microphone unplugged again? And the winning option was, what? I can't hear you. Wrong. Of course not. Your sound engineer, that's me, will prevent it, was the correct answer for today's poll. There will be no winners. But we do have other questions. Surprisingly, our Q&A is not limited to stupid questions or polls that we start with. We have other questions too. I'm very excited. Welcome, welcome everyone. I am delighted to be greeting you on this wonderful Sunday. Did I say Saturday live stream earlier? I think I may have said Saturday live stream. We've been doing them on Saturdays so long that I get confused. It's Sunday today, isn't it? Yes, also it's 1800 UTC. I get confused in multiple ways. Don't worry though, don't worry. It's not any kind of neurological or mental decline. No, it is my incompetence, you see. It's not progressive, it's not chronic, it's just personality. So, oh well, let's get started. Now, for those of you who have been here before, and welcome again, my dear friends, and all of the people who support me, thank you so much. If you are a YouTube member, please demonstrate to the rest of the plebs, the ones who do not have special emojis, the extreme privilege of having special emojis that you can use in the chat, including ones that we added recently that reflect some of the topics we discussed in our Sinks Are Shipping talk, which may or may not have been the ships are sinking, but in any case, you'll figure it out. First question of the day. Brewcat asks, which multisig setup can you recommend for holding life-changing amounts of Bitcoin? Details on software-hardware combinations would be much appreciated. Thanks. Brewcat, I have some reservations about the use of multisig for non-expert users in terms of long-term holding. There are a couple of subtle pitfalls that can occur when using multisig that can actually lead to problems. One of the subtle pitfalls is that every multisig address uses a different public key. And because the multisig address is composed from a script that has all 3 public keys, you can't actually reproduce that script accurately if you don't have a backup of the xpub. Meaning that if you have 3 seeds that you've backed up, 3 mnemonic phrases that you use with 3 hardware wallets, and you have a 2 of 3 scheme, that means you need signatures from 2 of the mnemonic phrases, from private keys from 2 of the mnemonic phrases in order to sign a transaction, but you need all 3 in order to reconstruct the actual multisig script, which is also a requirement for signing a transaction. So effectively, it's 2 of 3 on the private keys, but it's 3 of 3 on the public keys. And if you have a 3 of 5, it's 5 of 5 on the public keys and 3 of 5 on the private keys. This is a subtle but very dangerous little nuance about multisig, which means that if you lose the backups of the public keys that correspond to those multisig addresses, you cannot reconstruct the script. And if you cannot reconstruct the script, you cannot sign a transaction, even if you have sufficient private keys. Oops, that's dangerous. And it's the kind of dangerous thing that can really get newbies into hot water. So, which multisig setup can I recommend? As long as you understand some of these pitfalls, then For Bitcoin, you can use a number of desktop solutions and clients that make it very, very easy to do so. You can also use various hybrid solutions which involve sharing custody to some degree with a third party, where they do not have sufficient keys for quorum, but they hold some keys to help you with backup, and you do have sufficient keys for quorum, giving you full control and giving them no veto. So you can do that. A solution like that, for example, is offered by Casa, BitGo, and other companies. You can construct your own using a variety of software clients that allow you to compose multisig and do the various coordination and workflow things required to construct the multisig addresses in the first place, as well as sign transactions afterwards. Software like Spectre Desktop and Unchained Capital, those are the two most well-known software packages for doing your own multisig scheme. Now, all of these solutions assume, and I would strongly recommend, that you use hardware wallets to represent each one of the signers. So you have a hardware wallet with a BIP39 mnemonic backup that is backed up somewhere safe, with or without an optional passphrase that you use as one of the signers of this multisig. Then another hardware wallet is another of the signers, and another hardware wallet is another of the signers. So for example, if you have a 2 of 3, you have 3 hardware wallets, 3 mnemonic phrases, backed up in 2 locations each. That's 6 backups, and that gives you sufficient security. As you can see, from an operational perspective, the backup did just get rather complicated. So that may be a problem. Now, you can actually use the same hardware wallet to do single signature operations off that mnemonic phrase, and also use it as a participant in a multi-signature scheme. So you can try all of those things. So software-hardware combinations, any one of 3 or 4 different types of software. Another thing to remember is that native multisig at the protocol level is offered in Bitcoin and a few other blockchains, but it's not offered in Ethereum and the many copycat clones, wannabes that are using a similar smart contract-based solution. So in that case, you would use a smart contract to do the multisig, such as, for example, the Gnosis multisig that exists in Ethereum. Again, complicated situations. All right, we've got 480 people on the live stream. How exciting is that? It used to be that we only got a couple hundred people showing up every week, week after week, but now we're in bull market bubble territory. Yeah, I know it's down like 15% since the all-time high, but that's still in bull market territory. How short your memory that you would think this is a giant correction when we are already at ridiculous numbers compared to the beginning of last year. All right. Let's go to our next question. Our next question comes from Gaston. How can I verify that my hardware wallet is sending the money to the address it shows on the display, and in reverse, how can I be sure that a receive address shown by my wallet is actually controlled by me? Gaston, there is always an element of trust. You are trusting that the firmware installed on your hardware wallet is operating correctly and has been sufficiently audited and scrutinized, and vulnerabilities have been fixed. And because of the nature of hardware wallet design, you are trusting the most minimal set of hardware and software that you can imagine. Well, but you still have to put some trust into that device. So how can you be sure? Well, in case of the receive address, you could also have a watch-only wallet that uses an extended public key to generate all the receive addresses on a smartphone or something like that. So you can compare what you see there with what you see on the screen of your hardware wallet. So in that case, you're using two trust minimized solutions in order to check the same facts. And having a watch-only wallet by exporting an XPub onto a smartphone isn't a bad idea. It gives you the possibility of being able to generate receive addresses without having to pull out your hardware wallet over the long run. It does introduce some privacy risks, of course. How can you verify that it's sending the money to the address it shows on the screen, or even that it's sending the amount it shows on the screen and it's paying the fee it shows on the screen? Well, you have to trust that the software in the hardware wallet, the firmware if you like, is correctly dissecting the transaction that it's about to sign, and that the information is being presented on the screen without being compromised in some way. But the reason you can trust that is because a hardware wallet and its firmware represent the minimum set of functions that can achieve that singular purpose that is most heavily scrutinized and audited. So you have to put your trust in somewhere. You might as well put it into a minimum set of hardware with a minimum set of firmware on it that is purpose designed to do just one thing, this thing. Make sure that it dissects and understands exactly how much you're sending and where, and can display that information on the screen accurately. All right. Our next question of the day. Blockchain surveillance companies release reports detailing how much criminal funds are moved using cryptocurrency. Their number is low, about 0.5% of all crypto transactions. But how on earth could they track this data? Well, Vlad, first of all, I would take all data of this type with a giant grain of salt. It involves some very, very, very big assumptions. Sometimes those assumptions are obvious, sometimes those assumptions are non-obvious. And I would very carefully question the assumptions that go into it. So for example, you may often actually see similar phrasing to the one you use, which is criminal funds, which I think is a fantastic oxymoron of sophistry and deceit. Because how can funds themselves be criminal? Funds are not criminal. Funds can be used to buy things. Those things may be banned, in which case the purchase of them may be a crime, and using funds to commit a crime makes that a crime, but it doesn't make the funds criminal. Funds are just funds. We have a term for that. It's called fungibility. It means that we don't give motive to money. But there's a good reason why people would try to shift the perspective from the act, which is criminal, to the means, which is the money. Because all of law enforcement has been shifted to try to control the means rather than the actual criminal act, because it's a lot easier to prosecute the means. So this isn't just a coincidence that the focus has shifted towards illicit funds, illicit transaction, and criminal money. That's a deliberate attempt to shift your perspective from understanding that money isn't the criminal thing here, it's the act that you use the money for. And where is it criminal exactly? And how do we define criminal? So for example, the blockchain surveillance companies, are they tracking the cryptocurrency used by, let's say, the CIA to transfer money to, let's say, Saudi militias operating illegally in Yemen in violation of international law? Now, under international law, that is a crime. Specifically, it's a war crime, and it's being used to pursue genocide, the biggest war crime. Is that criminal funds? If they use cryptocurrency, is that criminal funds? I'm pretty sure that's not what they mean. But Jimmy buying a doobie in a state that hasn't yet legalized cannabis is surely criminal funds. So again, there is a heavy dose of morality, and not really universal morality, but a specifically perverse, puritanical, conservative, corporate morality that tries to make it seem like certain victimless actions are the greatest crimes of all, and genocide is profitable. So let's not talk about that. How do they know? Well, they probably track certain transactions that look like they involve escrow accounts in specific dark markets, because of course the biggest crime you can commit is to buy substances that your government has deemed you shouldn't be using on your own body. So that's what they mean. You know, I think that what they're doing is a crime, because the consistent broad-based violation of the privacy rights of billions of individuals around the planet is in itself a crime. It's a crime against humanity, it's a crime against common decency, it's certainly a crime in my conception of right and wrong, in my conception of morality, and it's also a crime under a number of different international laws, the UN Convention on Human Rights and things like that. But of course, I bet you they don't consider their own funding to be criminal funds. Is that enough sarcasm for you? Let's move on. So much fun. This is a good point, maybe, to tell you about non-criminal uses of your money that you can spend crypto on, that surely even the blockchain analytics companies will not consider criminal, such as buying delightful t-shirts that say silly things like "Vires in numeris," "Ask me about Bitcoin," on a baby onesie, "Not your keys, not your coins," or the collection of products we have about Ethereum, Bitcoin, Monero, and other cryptocurrencies, as well as in Spanish. Or you could spend it on an education, which of course educating you on cypherpunk counterinsurgency of the banking system will certainly be a crime at some point, but it's not yet. So you can squeeze in some soon-to-be criminal education by taking a course like Intro to Bitcoin and Open Blockchain with 151 5-star reviews, or Choose Your Wallet, where you learn how to find the right wallet for yourself so that you can promote your own criminal enterprise in complete safety and security. 615 people. That's 200 more than last time I enumerated the number of people on the live stream. Many of those joined too late to hear the sarcastic response about blockchain analytics and are now wondering why on earth I'm calling my own workshops criminal education. Rewind, my friends, rewind. Back to basics, asks Mikael Holmstrom. What were the major existing innovations that made Bitcoin possible? What a great question, Mikael. The major existing innovations that made Bitcoin possible were the invention of cryptography, which of course goes back to antiquity. We believe that cryptography is probably a couple thousand years old. Secret writing, per se, is probably a couple thousand years old. But the official use of cryptography certainly goes back to Roman times with the infamous Caesar cipher used by Julius Caesar, among others, in order to encrypt battlefront communications with the Roman troops. Cryptography. But these were forms of symmetric cryptography, which made it very difficult to do things like key exchange. In fact, the famous idea of how you used to do key exchange was to tattoo the key onto the head of the courier and let the hair grow back in, thereby hiding it from the enemy. Not a very good solution for the courier, also not very easy to change keys very often. Other innovations included, of course, public key cryptography, or asymmetric cryptography using public-private key pairs, an invention that came in the 1970s and where Diffie-Hellman, Rivest, Shamir, and Edelman promoted the use of asymmetric cryptography through a series of inventions around that. Then we have hash algorithms. I don't know when hash algorithms were invented, but I believe they were in the 60s and 70s. And of course, the invention of binary trees using cryptographic hash algorithms, an invention by Ralph Merkle, who is still around and interested in Bitcoin, is used in Merkle trees. Adam Back's idea to use hash grinding as a proof-of-work algorithm to prevent spam, Wei Dai's B-money that chained signatures together, all of these preceded the invention of Bitcoin. Most digital currencies based on cryptography, including the earliest examples of secure systems by David Chaum, with DigiCash in the early 90s, and the blind Chaumian signatures invented by David Chaum. All of these inventions, of course, predate Bitcoin. It's actually better to think of Bitcoin not as a novel technology per se, or an invention per se, but more as a mashup of lots of different pre-existing inventions that got combined in a brilliant way, together with a sprinkling of brilliant monetary economics, and created a system that was very, very successful. And you know, from that perspective, we get to Bitcoin of today. Let's see, what else is happening? People are talking on the chat. We've got some good conversations going. Now, did you know that these videos that we've been doing every single weekend, that take a whole bunch of people behind the scenes working to prepare, to produce, and of course afterwards to repackage and deliver, this takes a lot of work. And in order for that work to happen, and in order for us to be able to deliver these videos under Creative Commons licenses, all the videos on the channel you'll see have a CC BY license, Creative Commons attribution, rather than the more restrictive YouTube license, which means that others can mash them up and reuse them. And all of these videos are delivered ad-free, so you do not get interrupted by sponsors trying to sell you Squarespace or something like that. No, I didn't get paid to say that. And all of those ad-free, open licensed videos are possible because of the contributions and support that I get through Patreon, through my community builders on Patreon, as well as through YouTube memberships and direct donations on my website. So I'm going to take a moment now to thank all of the people who make it possible for me to do this work, who make it possible for me to fund my team, and to continue to build a sustainable education business that is neutral, that does not rely on sponsors and therefore has no influence from corporate interests or other interests in order to promote a specific agenda or product or project or idea. But instead, I can say whatever I want, and the people who support me make it possible for me to spread education. Let's say thank you. Now, you may know that my patrons are the cat's meow. More than 800 community builders support me with a monthly contribution on Patreon, and this is just a sampling of those who decided to opt in to have their names mentioned on the live stream. So I would like to extend my special thanks to Yes to No COVID, Agustin Labaroni, Ala Abbasi, Andrew Mahawald, Attila Daxo, Becker Likes Tiramisu, Becker Tsuri, Bill Barhead, Bitcoin Newbie, Brooklyn Frank, Chantal Lang, Dasher, David Fryer, David Hardridge, David Orban, Demosthenes, Eccentric Biped, Emily Sandra, Frank M. Fremen, Giovanni, Globally Yours, Impervious, Jamalal Imba, Janet Yellen, Josie, Karen Ishihara, Cosmatos, L'Uomo Contento, Lucia, aka Dancing Crypto, Mattia, Mirio Eggman, Mon, Niraj Badaya, Noise, Not Your Keys, Not Your Coin 1618, Outback Trader, Pablo Navarro, Parbull, Rafael Cislak, Richard Taylor, Seth Casey, Stefan Cherry Pie, Stefan Cherry Pie, thank you for that, Stephen Isaacson, Sven Sommer, T. Buddyman, Techno Pre-Nerd, Yuger Achil, Vovano, Whackpack, Yorgos Fugarakis, and Yes to Crypto. I would like to thank you so much for helping me do this. I would like to thank you for volunteering to make your names public, and I would most importantly like to thank you for not running the classic Bart Simpson's joke where you create names that make me pronounce rude things on air while reading them out. All right, let's go to our next question. Mr. Hartz says, could you briefly explain the technical differences between a sidechain, e.g. Liquid, and a layer 2 solution, e.g. Lightning Network? Excellent question, Mr. Hartz. Yes, let me attempt to explain the difference. A sidechain is like another blockchain that runs in parallel to Bitcoin's blockchain. Usually, sidechains are linked to another chain through the use of two-way pegs. That means that you can lock money on one chain, for example, Bitcoin, into a multisig key that is controlled by consensus on the sidechain, and then that releases amounts of the equivalent currency, perhaps liquid Bitcoin or some other currency on the sidechain, that you can use on the sidechain, and then you can lock that amount on the sidechain and release some of your Bitcoin from the multisig on the main chain, for example. That's what a two-way peg is. It's basically an atomic swap that is reciprocal on the two chains. Now, with a sidechain, you still have the same fundamental operation of a blockchain. You have a consensus algorithm. In the case of Liquid and other sidechains, it's often a federated consensus model, meaning a proof of authority signing model where a number of trusted nodes sign blocks or take turns signing blocks or sign blocks through some kind of multi-sig signature scheme, and once you've reached the threshold, then a block is considered valid and mined. So Bitcoin has proof of work, the sidechain has proof of something else, proof of authority, proof of stake, proof of work also, whatever. We see that, for example, with RSK, which is another sidechain that uses a federated system. The other similarity between a sidechain and a blockchain, of course, is that the sidechain also broadcasts all transactions to all participants, and all participants validate all transactions. So if you're running nodes in the sidechain network, then you're validating all of those transactions there. It's still a flood or broadcast network for the transactions and blocks. You may or may not be participating in consensus, but you are, you may not be participating in consensus algorithm directly, but you are participating in validating the consensus rules. That also means that sidechains have many of the same fundamental scaling limitations that exist in Bitcoin, because if everybody has to validate everything and see everything, then there are limits to how much data you can move around a global ledger like this. A layer 2 solution like the Lightning Network is fundamentally different because it doesn't use a broadcast blockchain. I really like the following analogy. Imagine if, in the Lightning Network, every payment channel between two Lightning Network peers who are connected by a payment channel is a mini sidechain. It's a mini sidechain that only has two nodes, those two nodes being the channel peers. They enforce consensus on this mini sidechain, on the payment channel. They ensure that the commitments are communicated between the two nodes. They ensure that the state of the channel is moved forward and that neither side can cheat. They validate the state of consensus on the payment channel. So the Lightning Network is more like a collection of currently some 16,000 payment channels, each of which can be thought of as an independent sidechain that is only validated by the two nodes that are participating in them, together with atomic swaps between all of these sidechains that allow you to take a payment and bounce it from sidechain to sidechain to sidechain, routing it along these payment channels. So if you think of payment channels as sidechains of two nodes, then suddenly you really see the difference here. Layer 2 solutions like the Lightning Network are not sidechains. They're routed networks of sidechains, and they have much better scaling characteristics because the enforcement of the consensus rules within a payment channel only requires two nodes, and they can exchange data very, very, very fast. They don't need to share it with everybody else on the network. Atomic swaps between payment channels ensure global consistency, and the underlying security model of atomic swaps into and out of the base blockchain, in the case of the Lightning Network that would be Bitcoin, ensures the overall security model of Lightning. I hope that explained and answered your question. Let me jump in the chat, see how people are doing, take a sip of coffee, and I'm going to mute my microphone while I do that. All right, someone's trying to ask a question on the chat instead of using the Slido, and they just got muted. 700 people on the live stream, which is just the perfect time to hear from our good friend G. G asks, "Hi Andreas, I know you're not an economist, but could you explain in simple terms what a deflationary system is and how it relates to an inflationary system? What are the pros and cons?" G, as not an economist, allow me to demonstrate. This is an inflationary system. And this is a deflationary system. And my producer is trying so hard not to crack up laughing here because that was completely ridiculous. But then again, it's not that much better than many of the explanation you get from mainstream economists. I mean, really, a lot of mainstream economics today is about blowing hot air like... And so you don't get very good explanations. The bottom line here is that in an inflationary system, the total amount of money that is circulating in the economy is increased, sometimes increased dramatically, but continuously increased. As a result, if you think of money as a metric, and you think of the global economy or whatever economy you're using in the context of that money as the total amount of actual value being transacted, then if you look at money as a metric, you simply divide the global economy by the amount of money that circulates, and you get a fraction of that value corresponding to each unit of money. You take, for example, the $114 trillion US economy, or whatever the number is right now, and then you divide that by whatever number of dollars are available, and you get a value per dollar that corresponds to actual economic activity, whatever that number is. So you can imagine if you're increasing the divisor, if you're producing more money, then you're taking the same amount of economic activity and you're just dividing it into smaller and smaller pieces because you have more and more pieces. And that means that the amount of value that is reflected in each economic unit of currency goes down. You get to buy less with each dollar. It has less value because there's too many dollars dividing the same amount of economic activity. creating more dollars doesn't increase the economic activity. The economic activity is the same. Another way to describe this is take a pizza, and if you cut it into 8 slices, you have 8 slices of pizza. If you're really hungry and cut it into 16 slices, now you have 16 slices of pizza, but you still have the same amount of food. Thank you, Hernan, for the helpful emoji demonstration of pizza slices. A disinflationary or deflationary currency, depending, is one in which the number of units does not increase, or it increases very, very slowly, so that the overall economic activity that it represents is either increasing faster or at the same pace, which means that you are not dividing by a greater and greater number. You're either dividing by the same number, or the thing at the top of the fraction is going up as well as the thing at the bottom of the fraction, and as a result, the overall number remains the same, the ratio of economic activity to monetary units. A deflationary system is where the amount of units is actually decreasing. A disinflationary system is one where it is either not inflating as fast as the economic activity, or it is deflating slowly against the economic activity. Of course, Bitcoin is a disinflationary system because there is inflation. New Bitcoin is being created. It's just being created at a rate of less than 2%. And as a result, that is usually less than the increase in the value of the economy of the Bitcoin space. Did you like my first explanation better than my second explanation? Because I certainly did. It was a lot more fun to do. All right. Or as someone said, breathe in, breathe out, now cough. All right. What else are we going to do next? What else are we going to do next? Lucia asks, what are token burns? Why are they necessary in the first place, and what do they accomplish? You know, what perfect timing. Stuck this question right after the discussion about disinflationary currencies. Token burns are where you publicly demonstrate the destruction of tokens in circulation. So you remove them from circulation by sending them to an address that destroys them or that doesn't have a corresponding private key, making them unspendable forever. And there are such addresses in the Bitcoin space and, of course, in other blockchains too. You can create addresses that are so obviously artificial that there's no possibility they arrived from a random private key. Therefore, you can assume there is no private key. Therefore, you can assume that any money sent to them is permanently out of circulation. So what happens when you remove money from circulation? When you remove money from circulation, the amount of total money in circulation decreases, which means that the purchasing power of the remaining amount of money in circulation increases in value. The purchasing power increases, meaning you demonstrate deflation. You deflate the money supply by burning the tokens. And so if you think about it in dollar terms, if you printed dollars, you inflate. Well, if the central bank took a whole bunch of existing dollars and put them in the middle of Times Square and very publicly set them on fire, then you would know exactly how many dollars have been removed from circulation. And as a result, you get this public demonstration of deflation. It's a monetary policy and a monetary activity. What do we do now? I mean, do you think it might be time for down the rabbit hole? I know you've been missing it. Lots of people have been asking. So for those of you who are new, and a lot of people are new, I often try to ask myself a question that no one has asked me this week that I would like to answer. So I ask myself, I answer myself, and you get to suffer the consequences. We call that special segment Down the Rabbit Hole with Andreas. And on today's Down the Rabbit Hole segment, I want to talk about paper wallets. Now, paper wallets are not simply things that you record on paper. I like recording things on paper. It's a convenient way to record something like a mnemonic phrase. And in fact, recording a mnemonic phrase on paper is one way to do a backup. It's not as good as recording it on steel, but it is one way of doing a backup, and it's better than not doing a backup at all. But what I'm talking about when I say paper wallet is a technology that was introduced way in the beginning of Bitcoin, which is a single key paper wallet. This is where you record a private key and a corresponding Bitcoin address as QR codes that are printed out onto a piece of paper. That's what we call a paper wallet. And paper wallets were extremely popular in the early days of Bitcoin in 2013 and 2014. We didn't have mnemonic phrases. We didn't yet have deployed wallets with BIP32 hierarchical deterministic wallets where we could generate as many addresses and keys as we wanted to. We didn't have easy backups with mnemonic phrases. So how did we store long-term amounts of crypto in cold storage? We used paper wallets. In fact, I built a company that would send out a kit that you could use to build pretty paper wallets with nice security features on your own computer with a bootable operating system. And at the time, that was okay. Well, it's not okay anymore. And even though I liked paper wallets and I used paper wallets and I even sold kits for paper wallets, I have spent the last 5 years telling people not to use paper wallets. Paper wallets are obsolete technology. Single key paper wallets have nuanced pitfalls that can cause newbies to lose money. In order to use them, you need a degree of technical sophistication where you can very, very easily exceed your level of technical knowledge and fall into obvious mistakes that cause you to lose money. It requires a knowledge of operating systems, information security, and operational security practices that most people can't execute. And there's no need to go through all that because we now have purpose-built mini computers called hardware wallets with a minimum set of hardware and software that can produce incredibly flexible multi-currency, multi-account, hierarchical deterministic wallets with the ability to generate a new address for every transaction and even for multiple different cryptocurrencies, and back all of that up on 12 English words that you can record on paper, steel, or any other way you want. And that is the state of the art for key management, key generation, key storage, transaction signing, and backup. Anything you could do with a single key paper wallet, you can do better with a mnemonic phrase. And it's not just the paper wallet. As a storage mechanism, it's fine. The problems come into how do you generate these things? What software and what hardware do you use to generate the paper wallets in the first place? And effectively, the answer to that is a hardware wallet, only one not built by security professionals to exacting specifications and a minimum set of hardware and software, one built by you on an old Dell computer, a self-installed version of Linux that you somehow procured from the internet without getting a Trojan, and then you send all of that to a printer that you hope will not maintain a memory image of that printout, and then in order to spend, you have to repeat this process and sign a transaction by properly sweeping all of the UTXO and not creating extraneous change, and then sign that transaction on a device that again isn't a hardware wallet, but is in fact a laptop that you constructed hoping it is properly air-gapped, properly configured, and didn't get any Trojan software installed, even though it contains a myriad of applications and you have not got the skills to audit it properly, I'm sorry to say. So, DIY hardware wallets are needed in order to use paper wallets, and that's why they are very, very dangerous for newbies. Do not use single key paper wallets. Simply don't. There is no conceivable reason why you can't do the same or better by buying a properly designed hardware wallet that has been audited. If you're really paranoid, get one that's open source, get one that supports air-gapped operation, get one that allows you to introduce your own entropy. The cold card is a great example of that. Or get one of the other ones that are still much better than your DIY solution. And before you jump in and say, yes, but what about if I use Tails? No. Yes, but what about if I use the USB stick? No. Yes, but what about if I used AES 256 through TrueCrypt and VeraCrypt? No. And before you jump in and ask me, but what about any of the other myriad solutions? A mnemonic phrase generated by a purpose-built piece of hardware stored on a secure element in a purpose-built piece of hardware where you can sign transactions securely and confirm them on a screen that has no other purpose and no other software is always better than anything you can do. Don't use paper wallets. Thank you. And that was our section on Down the Rabbit Hole. Someone in the chat said, but what about... No! Every time on Twitter. Anonymous asks, what is the best way to get funds out of a paper wallet and move it to a hardware wallet? That's a great question. Many software companions that you can use with a hardware wallet have the ability to do what is known as a sweep. A sweep is the mechanism we use to clear funds out of a paper wallet. A sweep takes all of the UTXO, all of the funds from the paper wallet, and in a single transaction without change, transfers those funds to a destination address that belongs to your new wallet. You can enter your own destination address. You could do this on a software wallet, or you could connect a hardware wallet to a variety of software wallets that have hardware wallet interfaces and ask it to sweep a paper wallet. So what you need to do is research which software wallets allow you to sweep a paper wallet either to an address of your choice, so you can send it to an address that is controlled by your hardware wallet, or can connect to a hardware wallet interface to get an address and sweep it into there. And that's how you move funds off a paper wallet. All right. Let's see, what else have we got here? Just about 10 minutes to go. We're going to answer 3 or 4 more questions, and then I'm going to tell you about upcoming events we have on YouTube and why you should subscribe to the channel so you get notifications. Anonymous asks, how do I explain the benefits of open blockchains to my friends who still dismiss it by calling it boomer political labels like libertarian Ponzi scheme? All right. So first of all, I have to question your desire to try to explain the benefits of open blockchains, or even better, Bitcoin, to people who use political labels like libertarian Ponzi scheme. You know what? A libertarian Ponzi scheme is still a hell of a lot better than a neoliberal neo-fascist Ponzi scheme, which is the stock market. So I don't know where you're getting your information. Do your own research. And by that, I don't mean watch a YouTube by a deranged egomaniac screaming at the top of their lungs about the New World Order. Instead, do some actual research and try to understand the technology. Generally speaking, libertarian Ponzi schemes are not taught in computer science classes at every Ivy League university using college-level textbooks like this one, or things like that. Generally speaking, of course, but then again, Bitcoin is, as is the technology that is used in Bitcoin. So unless you want to say that Stanford, Berkeley, Harvard, Princeton, Cambridge, Oxford, the University of London, and dozens and dozens and dozens of other Ivy League universities, including the fantastic university where I teach, the massive open online course at the University of Nicosia, are all teaching gibberish libertarian Ponzi schemes to gullible computer science students. I don't know what to tell you. Listen, in some cases, these friends or relatives are lost causes. I think, Anonymous, your biggest problem here is not explaining open blockchains. It's picking better friends. Sorry to say that. Ooh, very good question here from Oswald. First timer here. Taking your crypto wallet course. Thank you, Oswald. I want to start into Bitcoin cryptocurrency by selling my paintings. How is the best way to go about it? All right. Well, Oswald, that depends. If you're talking about selling physical paintings, then it's fairly easy to simply produce a wallet, and using my course, you can find how to choose one. And you can install one on your smartphone where you control your keys and make a backup of your mnemonic phrase. And then you can simply send someone a Bitcoin address and say, pay me, and I'll send you my painting. It's really that simple. Most people who sell things for cryptocurrency or specifically for Bitcoin start with a simple wallet on a smartphone. If we're talking about very large amounts of money and you're worried about keeping that kind of money on a smartphone app, then you could always buy yourself a hardware wallet. But why not just sell a few on the smartphone first and then use the proceeds to buy yourself a hardware wallet? You're going to find it easier to make that transition in steps and not start straight away from the more technical advanced approach. Now, once you've achieved that level of sophistication with cryptocurrencies, I would certainly recommend that you look into an area of technology called non-fungible tokens, or NFT. Non-fungible tokens are basically titles of ownership to either tangible or intangible items that can be traded on the blockchain. And one of the fantastic applications of non-fungible tokens that has boomed recently is the use of non-fungible tokens to sell title or ownership or auction off access to digital art, crypto digital art. So people are creating digital art and then are producing non-fungible tokens that allow you to demonstrate your support for the artist by buying one of these and having some kind of limited edition token that demonstrates your support. Now, of course, you can always copy the art. You can take a screenshot of it. You can do all of those things, but then what you can't do is demonstrate to others that you actually own the non-fungible token that demonstrates your patronage of the arts and your support of artistic creation and expression. And this is what a lot of critics of NFTs miss, that it's not about owning the art in an exclusionary way any more than it is about the patrons who funded the production of the Sistine Chapel or the statues of David, wanted to have those things in their living room so they could exclude other people from taking photos of them. It's about patronage of the arts and support of artists. All right. Oh, this one's going to be fun. Let's try this one. Is it possible to explain DAI stablecoin within 60 seconds? If so, will you try? The DAI stablecoin is a system of money that has its value pegged to the US dollar on a one-to-one basis, so that one DAI equals $1. It achieves this by establishing lockboxes or vaults where people can deposit collateral. This collateral takes the form of different cryptocurrencies, specifically Ether at first, but now increasingly a whole basket of cryptocurrencies, which is why it's now called multi-collateral DAI versus single collateral DAI, or SDAI. DAI then uses this collateral to adjust its purchasing power so that it always remains 1-to-1 to the US dollar. If someone has put collateral into one of these vaults, they can withdraw DAI. Effectively, they're taking a DAI loan against their collateral, but in order to do so, they have to have more collateral than its value in US dollars. So if you have $150 worth of Ether in one of these vaults, you can take $100 of DAI maximum. And if your collateralization rate drops below 1.5, you have to add collateral, otherwise your vault is liquidated and sold at auction to recover the money. This ensures the stability of the system because people can conduct arbitrage through these auctions in order to peg the value. It uses a system of oracles to track the value of Ether and other cryptocurrencies on open markets, and by creating incentives to lend DAI at interest rates or borrow DAI at interest rates, and the arbitrage opportunities, it allows the market to adjust collateralization percentages in order to ensure stability over the long term. Of course, stability over the long term doesn't mean stability all the time and stability over the short term, and DAI has had a few moments when it became slightly dodgy and volatile, but it very quickly recovered and has proven that decentralized stablecoins are possible, and that was way more than 60 seconds. I failed. All right, so while I contemplate my failure and apologize very deeply to all of you who used more than 60 seconds of your time for DAI, I'm going to apologize Japanese style. I failed to do this in 60 seconds. Let's talk about what's coming up next. So if you haven't noticed, I have a YouTube channel. Said YouTube channel has now received 12 million views with more than 600 ad-free videos. Coming up next, on March 14th, we're doing Q&A on the topic of decentralized finance. On March 21st, I'm doing a new unscripted talk. What is the topic? I don't know. I will find out on March 20th when I talk to myself about what topic I should talk about the day after, have a mild panic attack, figure something out, and then deliver it improv style. On March 28th, we have the open topic Q&A, at which point you can ask me, hey Andreas, why was your new talk on March 21st so unscripted, improvised, and poorly delivered? And I will say, because it was unscripted, improvised, and last minute. After all of that is completed, we will move into April. But if you want to know when these things are happening, you need to click on the subscribe button to subscribe to the channel and receive notifications and reminders of these videos. In order to get notifications, you have to click the little bell icon next to subscribe. So let's do that. All right, what else have we got? Let's do a speed round of Q&A until the end of the live stream. We have 4 minutes left. Post-Taproot, what is the next innovation in Bitcoin? Tomer, I think the next couple of innovations are the ability to rebind transaction outputs to different inputs, and this is called AnyPrevOut. And AnyPrevOut is one of the proposed solutions that will actually allow us to do a very interesting form of Lightning called L2. After that, Covenants, or Object Template Verify, which allows us to constrain transactions to only be spendable to perhaps whitelisted addresses and vaults, or other spending conditions like velocity conditions, which can greatly increase the security of transactions programmatically. Do you think the recent corporate interest in using Bitcoin as a reserve asset to prop up balance sheets represents a step towards commercialization similar to what happened with the internet, or will it be a poison pill? CryptoWoke, yes, I mean, it is a step towards commercialization, and with it, it will bring some dilution of the principles, because a lot of these companies do not share the fundamental principles of decentralization. But at the same time, here's the big difference. they can't unilaterally change the rules. They can't create walled gardens and fenced-off playpens like Facebook and Google and force us to have a less decentralized version of Bitcoin in their walled gardens. And when they do, by using things like custodial exchanges and things like that, they can't force changes to the underlying consensus rules. So one of the advantages with Bitcoin is that while you can, with money, buy more Bitcoin, you can't then, using more Bitcoin, buy more influence or power in the system. And that's what protects us. Anita asks, I want to use Electrum instead of Trezor or Ledger's wallet software for my hardware wallet, but it seems that I need to use the company software to initialize the hardware wallet and to update the firmware. Is there an option to not use their software at all? Anita, yes, but that option is to use command line interfaces on the software device bridge on the command line to do things like updating the firmware so that you don't visit their site. And of course, the software bridge will visit their website unless you use Tor or some other VPN to download the firmware first to your local device. So you can, but I would say it's not a huge loss of privacy. If you use a VPN or Tor for all of your browsing and you proxy these connections, you can access their websites and update the firmware on your hardware wallet if that's the only thing you use their software to do. So I don't think it's a huge risk. Anonymous asks, what is the best video on your channel to suggest to someone who is skeptical about Bitcoin, assuming that they're not going to spend more than 20 to 30 minutes before aha moment? I want to change their mind because I care. I know you care, Anonymous. We also care. Introduction to Bitcoin is probably my most popular video. It's right at the top of my channel, and it's the first video on the Bitcoin for Beginners playlist. It's probably one of the easiest explanations as to why Bitcoin matters and what it is, and it seems to work. Basically, I did that introduction talk so many times, and that is the most popular one, the one we currently highlight. So it's been focus group tested, audience tested, A/B tested, all of the tests, and that's the one most people recommend, but I don't know. Vlad asks, how likely is the next hack of the DAO scale? Over time, does the Ethereum VM become more resistant to human errors in smart contract code? Let me answer the second one first. Over time, the Ethereum VM does not become more resistant to human errors in smart contract code because smart contract code is Turing complete. The Ethereum VM cannot predict what that code is going to do in advance. And the vast majority of the problems that we see in smart contract code are not because of bugs in the VM. They're because people don't understand how the VM executes. Very rarely have we seen bugs in the VM. Most of the bugs in the VM have to do with accounting for gas, and they cause denial of service attacks, not loss of funds attacks. I don't believe there's ever been loss of funds due to a VM bug. So how likely is the next hack of the DAO scale? I would put the probability at somewhere between 100% and 100%. It's really simple. We are going to see these hacks because that is an acceptable risk within an ecosystem that values rapid innovation over conservative stewardship of money. That is Ethereum's differentiator. If you want conservative stewardship of money, use Bitcoin. But you're going to lose out on innovation. Right now, there's a whole fight going on about whether or not and when we will activate Taproot, and that's 3 years after the last soft fork, and we still can't get it done. They're proposing dates around 2022. In the intervening time, Ethereum has done 732 hard forks. Okay, maybe not, but you get the point. Rapid innovation comes at a cost, and that cost everyone in Ethereum is willing to pay, and that is that you have to iterate a lot before you trust any smart contract code. Anonymous asks, I know it's out of today's topic. There's nothing out of today's topic. It's open topic. It's wide open. But I'd like to know what would be the best platforms to prepare the income tax report regarding cryptos, and which one do you personally use? That's platforms. I apologize. Thanks in advance. Guillaume. We pronounce it Guillaume. Mais bien sûr, Guillaume, je sais comment prononcer les noms français. Alors, Bitcoin.tax is probably one of the more popular platforms that I have used in the past. I don't use it anymore. My accountant does a lot of this on their own because it's quite complex in my particular situation. But platforms like that make it very, very easy, and we see more and more platforms that come out that help you do tax. One of the problems with using any sort of tax platform is that it will create some concerns of privacy. In order for it to do your taxes, it has to know about all of your transactions. And so you have to be very careful with privacy. Use multi-factor authentication, strong passwords, VPNs, and things like that in order to protect yourself. Merci, Guillaume. Justin asks, I'd love to get a hardware wallet. Sounds dumb, but computer technology changes over time. No CD drives, etc. Are you at all worried the USB port may be updated over time and then you have a hardware wallet you can't use? Justin, this is the most frequently asked question about hardware wallets, and I am delighted to answer it in another variation once more. The hardware wallet is simply a vessel for signing transactions, generating keys, and storing keys. The vessel itself is not important. Think of this as cooking a recipe. Your mnemonic phrase is the ingredients, meat and potato. The BIP39 standard defines how you can take that mnemonic phrase and turn it into a meal through this recipe. And the hardware wallet is the pot that you cook it in. And it's important to have a good pot, otherwise it might break and spill all of your secret ingredients all over the place. But as long as you know the recipe and you can find your ingredients, your mnemonic phrase, you can use a different pot. You can use a newer pot that has a different port on the bottom. You could use a software wallet that supports BIP39, the recipe, and not a hardware wallet. Or you could use one of the competing models of the hardware wallet. It's just a pot. The pot is not important. It's convenient, it's necessary, and it has to be robust. But it is not a single point of failure. You have no dependency on the device itself. The dependency you have is on the mnemonic phrase backup that you surely have kept secure by recording it on a durable medium, making at least 2 copies and storing them in physically diverse but secure locations. If you have that mnemonic phrase, you can always recover. If your hardware wallet breaks, you can recover. If it's lost, you can recover. You can recover on any of 60 different hardware wallet brands and models that exist that all implement the same BIP39 recipe, or any one of thousands of software libraries. You could even take the code that's in this book and write your own in order to recover a BIP39 mnemonic phrase in software. If you had to recreate it all from the Stone Age of computing, you could do that. Great question, Justin. And with that, thank you so much. I will see you again in 2 weeks. That was the last of our questions. It is always such a delight to do these live streams and answer all of your questions. Thank you. This week we had fantastic questions. And thank you again to all of those who support me and make it possible to do this. It was great spending some time with you. If you're on the YouTube chat and you want to demonstrate once again the most amazing emojis in the industry, the dankest crypto memes, the most colorful illustrations of our shared common principles, please do so now.
Hi, I'm Andreas Antonopoulos. If you enjoyed that video, consider that it takes a lot of work to produce open and free content that can be shared with everyone around the world. This isn't sponsored by some company. It's not promoting a product or an altcoin or some kind of investment scheme. My goal is simply to help explain the technology of Bitcoin and open blockchains to as many people as possible in a neutral way that focuses really on the incredible possibilities that this technology brings us. If you'd like to support that mission, subscribe to my channel and go on patreon.com/Aantonop, where you can participate and help me build better content for more people. Thank you.